Welcome back to VE. So today is the first installment of the video series that I talked about in our latest blog episode, and that's doing some speed testing. And we're going to look at speed testing through a Cloudflare tunnel with the knowledge that our local network is a lot more efficient than the speeds that we can achieve through the tunnel due to our upload limitations from our ISP. But nonetheless, I wanted to take a look at the degradation that was taken on an upload speed if we were to use a Cloudflare tunnel at home. Now, this isn't necessarily the intended use, but it's good knowledge to have as you're planning your use cases a little bit and your kind of use plan, right? So, like if you're at home and you're on Wi-Fi, you probably want to communicate through your local IP address. But if you're on your phone and you're out and about and you need a file, that's when it's a great time to communicate with your Nextcloud storage. And if you don't know about the speeds or haven't at least thought about the speeds hit, you could be wasting a lot of time doing file uploads and a lot of aggravation. Also, you could be doing necessarily unneeded upgrades on your hardware or looking for hardware that you don't need at all because, your ISP is your limitation and not your hardware. So the first thing I want to do is do a file transfer to kind of establish a baseline here locally to my NAS. And then we're going to go off and we're going to do some other file transfers with the Nextcloud instance on my Proxmox. And we're going to do this one today with Nextcloud Turnkey. I'm going to do some more with Nextcloud in a Snap and Nextcloud AIO and probably some other Nextcloud instances. And then we might do some more afterwards with Nextcloud and other things. All right, so let's first take a look at the speeds that we can achieve with our Synology NAS just locally. Now, note this is an old Synology NAS and it's also on a 1 gigabit network and it's probably throttled more by Wi-Fi. So I sped this clip up quite a bit and I think it takes something like 34 seconds your time, but the total transfer took something like 11 minutes and 40 seconds, somewhere in there, thereabouts. I think it was just a little bit less. And it's important to note again that this is going to a Synology NAS locally, and I'm just doing this transfer more or less as a baseline. So the next thing I want to take a look at is this same 20.5 gig file. And you're going to notice something, and at least I noticed it. The size differences from moving this file from my Mac and the size that it takes up my Mac to the size it takes up on my Synology to the size it takes up on Nextcloud. And it's got a little bit of the way to do with how each storage setup is necessarily configured, basically. So the block size on your system will mean that something takes more or less depending on whether or not that block is fully filled or the block is filled up more. So if you have a block, it can only contain one application's worth of data. So if you have larger blocks, you can have larger storage and your MBR is better and some of your storage speeds are better and whatnot. But with a larger block, that also means that you lose more storage in zeros essentially because that block is full no matter if it stores 1 bit of the application and so forth. I'm sure some of you guys know that already, but it is a good little piece of information to understand why some of this might be 19 gigs, some of it 20.5, some of it 20, and so forth. The other thing you have to look at is some of these programs and some of these storage solutions also have native encryption or native compression inside of them, and that can be part of the problem that we're seeing. All right, so now we're going to go over and take a look at that local upload onto our Nextcloud solution. So here's the upload playing now of the Nextcloud upload of the same 20 gig file or thereabouts. And it's really noticing. So again, this is sped up quite a bit for you guys at a 20x fast forward. But this upload took 12 minutes and 40 seconds. So I think it's 2 seconds slower to a minute than the other. So the last upload, the one going to my Synology NAS, was 11 minutes and 38 seconds to be exact, and this is 12 minutes and 40 seconds. So they're almost a minute different. But the real interesting thing, especially if you watch this clip, the actual output, and I'm only going by the web output, so I don't know exactly what's going on in the background or what exactly processing files means. But the upload itself, where it goes across and it does its upload, took 10 minutes and 40 seconds. So there was 2 minutes of quote unquote processing time that Nextcloud reported as it did the upload. And I think that that's kind of interesting. I don't know if it was trying to apply some form of compression or whatnot, because if you look here at the end of the video, I believe I show, and no, I clipped it. All right, so if I look back at my settings here, where the actual file comes in and is completely uploaded, the file is a fair amount smaller in size on the Nextcloud storage. So it takes up 19.1 gigs in Nextcloud versus the 20.5 or whatnot on my Synology NAS. Okay, so now that we've done the two uploads with the Synology NAS, I wanted to take a look at the speed tests, and they should be above for my internet connection on this day, so that you kind of understand what we're dealing with and the bottlenecks that we're dealing with the Cloudflare tunnel. Now, necessarily, if you're on a cell phone connection or whatnot, your speeds may vary. 4G, 5G, whatnot, and I don't know. I know a lot of people have better internet connections than I do and whatnot, but I feel that this is probably more common than I think it is, because it's actually honestly for cable DSL, not fiber. Like when we lived in Massachusetts, we had Verizon Fios and we had much, much, much better internet. But for cable connections, it's one of the better ones I've had. Now, I've had better. At the Nashua House, we definitely had quite a bit better, but it's definitely a decent cable connection for what I've had. Now, we can get better down here. We don't necessarily need better, so it's not worth paying for it, and that whatnot. But so taking a look here at what we get, I'm getting about 350 megs down, 369 to be exact on this particular test, and 11 up. Now, I think they're saying that I'll get it a maximum 400 down and 15 up. It might have been 20 up. I'm not entirely sure, but it's definitely in the middle of the day was when this speed test was taken, and this is probably pretty general to what I would get if I was working with a Cloudflare tunnel on a general day remotely that was hosted here at the house. Now, I don't normally host my stuff here at this house, but I would say that honestly, I would be better off to. So I have a pretty crappy DSL connection, like copper DSL connection. I think they refer to it as ADSL at the Freedom House. And with that being said, I don't get as good as speeds up there. I think we might get 10 up. I'm not sure. It's definitely something like 25 down. So yeah, this is where we're at right now, and we're going to take a look here at what I did for the next upload test, which was to use the Cloudflare tunnel and some of the disadvantages. And I can say I didn't even film this full test. I cut it off at somewhere over 4.5 hours. Okay, so what you can see here is the actual upload test we did with the Cloudflare tunnel. And you can see me starting the test, and then the video kind of cuts and goes to the end of the test. And you can see that somewhere around 11 o'clock in the morning is when I took and started the test. Well, it looks like it was actually like 10:58, and it's almost 5 p.m. in the afternoon when we actually finished it, and it's still saying it had 2 hours to upload. So it initially started out saying 4 hours. We gave it somewhere around 5 hours to actually finish, 5, 6 hours to finish, and it was still going on. So you can see that, with the speed test, with the limitations of my internet connection and just the general limitations of everything else, I didn't actually hand calculate it to see what it should have taken via a hand calculation to see if my ISP was throttling me or any number of other things that could be happening. It was definitely a massive, large file for doing this type of connection, but it does, like, the fact that it took so long. And if you're doing video editing like me or doing some of these other projects, it is possible. A 20 gig file isn't that large for some of my video files. Even me in lower resolutions, I'm not filming 4K raw image or whatnot. But it's possible to have these files, and it can be somewhat of a challenge to sometimes get these stored onto a NAS, especially if you work like me, where you're quite often moving around. We're back and forth between two houses and whatnot. And I like to work traveling. My wife and I do a fair amount, and it's nice to have my files and just be able to work from a location. I've talked about it before. And that really brings me back to the Chasm stuff as I'm talking. Chasm stays remote at home, so it's my local network, which is nice. And I'm just streaming my desktop in my work environment to me, rather than trying to move around some of the big files. Really yet to see how that's going to work going from my home connection in Freedom, but we'll see with time where that brings up. Anyways, so back to the video, we had to stop it at 5 hours. It was just taking too long. So it brings us back to something that we know is the bandwidth limitations from our ISP are definitely going to affect this, and we need to consider how we work with this type of setup where maybe we connect to it local at home. I've mentioned this already once in this video, and then we only use this from our phone for doing backups or whatever, or our simple little uploads, maybe pull downs of files. Even though, when we're pulling down, we're still only getting that 11 to 15 megs a second coming. So, we should mind and only use it if it's a necessary thing. And some of you, this might not matter. You're only working with small files, photos, or whatnot, and this wouldn't be much of an issue. So next, that's what I'm going to go ahead and go over to. I did a smaller file test through the tunnel just to see if it would handle a normal size file, 500 megs-ish, and see how long that would take. So we're going to take a look here at that just now. Okay, so I thought it might be fun to work with a little bit smaller a file here and see if or what the speed differences look like with a smaller file. So the file that we worked with earlier in this video was over 20 gigs uncompressed or in its zip state, so compressed, but it's 20.5 gigs, and this new file that I grabbed is 461.6 or zero point 0.4 meg, so significantly smaller. I wanted to try uploading that and see what the times for uploading that looked like. So you can see right here us uploading the file through the tunnel, and this is a 500 meg file again, going through the Cloudflare tunnel to the same Nextcloud server that we just aborted the test on. And you can see this 500 meg file takes about 6 minutes. Now in a second here, we're actually going to jump over and take a look at what it took to get it uploaded locally and how long that took. Okay, so there you can see that we've uploaded this file through the tunnel. I just want to take and I want to head over, and I actually want to try this again with the smaller file, even though we know this isn't a fair test on the local network. I'm going to delete the file out and try this upload now over the local network. Okay, so as you can tell, or should be able to tell at this point, local network is a lot faster. And this same file that took 6-7 minutes to upload over the Cloudflare tunnel took 30 seconds on the local network. So I hope this video has been explanatory towards, the speed impact that you're going to take using a Cloudflare tunnel and allowed you to make some of the decisions on how to use your Cloudflare tunnel best so that you can have the least amount of impact to your life as you use it. It's definitely a useful tool, and this video by no means was meant to say that it wasn't, but it definitely was meant to educate and inform you a little bit about the speed impact that you might take. Now, your particular case might be a little bit different. As you can see, we have only like 11 megabyte upload, so between your upload and download speed, it can be very much different. And remember, when we're using this tunnel, all this internet traffic has to go out through our computer, out through Cloudflare, and then back in. So there's a big speed impact on all of that. Just something to note, something to consider and be aware of. So I hope you found this video informative and enjoyed it. And please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to help VE continue to make more videos like this. We plan on making this a speed testing series where we compare different Nextcloud instances, Samba, SMB, which is Samba, NFS, and other, file storage, speed related things to one another to help you make more informed decisions inside of your home lab or your general setup so you can have the best experiences. As always, have a good night.